The worst is not to take control of the force that controls your life. And that force is human emotion. I mean, I want you to think about this. What made the change possible? Did you get it? Did you see it? The answer is simple. We changed the emotional pattern that was controlling their life. And you and I have emotional patterns that are controlling us right now. Whether we're aware of it consciously or not doesn't matter. It's the force that is shaping you. It's shaping your relationship. It's shaping your finances. It's shaping your career. It's shaping the amount of joy or unhappiness or suffering or excitement you have right now in this moment. But it's an invisible force most of us never take a look at. You might want to take a look at it right now through the eyes of what we did with Frank and Kristen. Now, what was the emotional pattern that was dominating them at the beginning of the show? You could feel it, couldn't you? And there was this feeling of death, that there was no future. Probably the most common belief system in people in North America and now in Europe. 60% of Americans now believe that the future is going to be worse than the past for themselves and for their kids. 70% of Germans and Europeans, I think it's 80% according to the Pew study recently in France. Around the world, we're starting to believe that circumstances control who we are. Don't get me wrong, circumstances play a huge impact. Events play a huge impact on your life, but they're not the ultimate determining factor. The force of human spirit or emotion is it. With the right emotion, you can unleash things you could never dream of. And I know you know this is true. So take a look, let's analyze. Where do these two live after the accident? Well, where would you live if you were Kristen? I mean, you've lost your future supposedly, there's no intimacy, there's no chance of children, you've become the full-time nurse to your husband who you love, but now you're changing his catheter every few hours. You're afraid to leave the house because you're afraid, what if he falls over? He may stop breathing. I mean, there's no life. So she goes from the emotions of feeling depressed for the life she's lost, to feeling angry. I call it a crazy eight. We get tired of feeling sad and then we'll get angry for a while and then we beat ourselves up for being angry at ourselves or God or our partner and then we get all depressed again. It's a common pattern. You don't have to have something like their event happen in your life to get stuck in a crazy eight. But interestingly enough, she's living in that place and now what's Frank doing? Frank wants to help his wife, but he's got a limitation we got to break through. He's got a belief. All breakthroughs start with a change in your beliefs. Because once you believe how something is, that means you're certain that's how it is. If you're certain it can't change, you're right, it can't. I can't convince you, no one else can convince you. And Frank's thinking, I'm helpless and I've harmed my wife. And he's living with the emotions of guilt and sadness and depression. And when he's tired of that, he gets completely overwhelmed because he says, if I just would have not jumped in, or if I would have jumped in a different spot, or a million other things that they were different, then I wouldn't have destroyed my wife's life. Instead of saying, my wife needs me right now, and I don't give a damn if I'm trapped physically in this chair, my soul, my spirit's gonna reach her. That's my assignment, to get him to remember that power. To not only get him to remember it, but to get him to use it and shift his wife. And that's what we did through this process. How? Well, the process really was giving him a series of experiences that would change his entire belief about who he is. I could try to tell him, oh, here's what you can do. Yeah, I'm 6'7" and I obviously have use of all my appendages. Easy for me, right? But if I get him to have some experiences, like I bring him to Fiji and I show him he can get out of the house, more than get out of the house, become a world traveler and go through all the challenges that are part of that if you watch our little section of the story behind the story, you'll hear some things that weren't in the show about that, by the way. But I get him to travel to Fiji, and the first thing I got to do with him is I got to get him to experience, not know intellectually, but experience he can make a difference for his wife. He is not helpless. She needs him, and he can transform her. He can take her from crying, sad, out of control, angry, to laughing and giggling and feeling love that fast. It's a beautiful moment in the show if you watched. And all it is something called presence. Something if you're not clear about, do some homework, follow up with us or someone else, figure out how to create that, because that's what changes relationships. Presence. It works. And Frank starts to understand, not verbally, but by his own experience, hey, I don't have to live in that sadness or that feeling of being unworthy or that feeling of being overwhelmed. I can matter. I can matter to her. I don't have to be the person she just takes care of. It was a huge shift in the experience. And I'm giving you Frank's example because it relates to yours. Maybe you have different emotions, but don't we all get to points where we feel like we don't matter or we can't change something? We're stuck, and it's our belief. Great way to break that belief, get yourself another experience. That's what I do with people in seminars. That's what I do in any coaching process. Change it. What do we do after that? We take him through the experience of facing his fears, and we get him to do the skydive together with his lady. And he feels total freedom for the first time since the accident. You get freedom when you face your fear. Not just face it, but you push through it. I get him to face separation from his lady for 10 days. Get him to be in a room with Olympic athletes who couldn't move across the room. He couldn't move across the room, but now they're incredible, and he feels like he's not enough, and he has to push through that. Show him how to get back his dream, drive his truck, get in that thing and drive 100 miles an hour, even though all you got is your elbows to drive the darn thing, and I'm on the other seat. Pretty cool thing. So it was a stacking of these experiences that got Frank to own himself in a new way, to build a new identity, a new set of emotional patterns. So here are the steps, and this is what you want to do. What did I do with him? I did 4 things. That's all I really did at its core. Number 1, for both of them, for Frank and Kristen to transform, I identified where do they live emotionally. That's what you got to do. Where do they live emotionally? Well, we just decided, we just described where they live. Depression, anger on one side, feeling guilty, feeling overwhelmed, feeling sad on the other. There's no way they can change their life with that as the emotional fuel to get you to take action. You're not going to take action. There's not enough intensity to get you to get through the obstacles or the tragedies or the challenges. Once you see what the pattern is and you tell yourself the truth, this is where I'm living, step 2 I did with them, is I identified what's the antidote. So if fear is what's controlling things right now, we need an antidote called courage. Now, courage doesn't mean that you're not scared. Courage just simply means that you're scared to death, but you do it anyway. It's an emotional muscle. It doesn't feel good. You just exercise it. That's what courage is. I mean, everybody you know has different emotional patterns. And it may be hard to see it in yourself, but I bet you know it in other people. I mean, come on. Don't you know somebody who lives every day and they're angry all the time, or they're pissed off, or they're frustrated, or they're worried all the time? I mean, haven't you met people at different times who, don't you know somebody that's always kind of playful or crazy or cracking jokes? Better yet, do you know somebody who's not really funny, but they think they are? You know? And they tell a stupid joke and everything else. It's not even funny, but they crack themselves up so much that you find yourself cracking up, right? I mean, people have patterns. The question is, what's yours? See, if you can identify the patterns in other people, you can start to see them in yourself as well. And you know what we all do? We all find a way to try to get what I call home. Home is, I noticed after 9/11, I'm with 2,000 plus people from, I think it was 45 countries. I was in Hawaii. The accidents happened, the tragedy happened, you know, the attacks happened, and we got the information at 3 o'clock in the morning in Hawaii, and we had, you know, 100 plus people, 200 people that were from New York, many of which, you know, worked and had offices and friends in the towers, and all their friends died or their whole company disappeared. And I had to bring these people in from all these countries with different religions, different backgrounds, different belief systems. Some people were celebrating. Other people were crying and saying it was the end times. It was unbelievable. I noticed all this emotion around me. And the biggest thing to put them all together is I had to say, what's really going on here? And I noticed angry people got angry. Sad people got sad. Guilty people, a nurse, she was guilty. She wasn't there helping people, but she's always guilty. The angry lady's always angry. We all have a home. Many of the people didn't live in the United States, didn't know anyone in New York City, and they were yet angry, guilty, or sad. Why? They weren't angry, guilty, or sad about the 3,000 people a day that die of cancer and heart disease. They're all mothers, fathers, children. I pointed out that day. You can't be convenient with your compassion, and yet most of us are. We're unaware that we use events as a trigger to get home, back to the patterns we know, even if it's uncomfortable. So if you identify where you live emotionally, the patterns that are limiting you, the second piece is find the antidote. Courage can replace fear. If you're feeling this unbelievable feeling of overwhelm, you need love or support. And not just go get it, go give it. See, finding that antidote starts to change the game. And then after you identify it, you find the antidote. Number 3 is you got to practice that emotion. I know that sounds weird. I'll explain what I mean in a moment. But you got to do that emotion enough consciously that you can go from frustrated or depressed to determined. And you know how to shift that gear, and it's not fake, it's not some pump up, it's real. And it changes your life when you can do that like that. And it's a biochemical change. It's not some I'm happy, positive thinking BS. That's not what I teach. I'm not here to tell you go to your garden and chant there's no weeds. I'm here to say there's the weed, go pull it out. But you're not going to pull it out without determination, without passion, without commitment. Am I making sense? So if you know the pattern, if you find the antidote, if you practice it enough, and then the final step, you condition it. You practice enough that you can just automatically go into it, that's when your life changes. So what are you going to do as your assignment for this week? To take this little 10-minute, rant I'm giving you and convert it into a massive, measurable increase in the quality of your life. I can't do that for you. You can do it for yourself if you do what I tell you. Here's what you're going to do. Step one, and this will be on the web as well. Step one, you got to identify where you live. So where do you live? Where do you live emotionally? You personally, just like we did with Frank and Kristen. There are thousands of emotions. There's 4,000 words in the English language, I should say, for different individual emotions. I did the research on it years ago. I'm gonna have you take out a piece of paper, pen, take out your notebook, computer, get a page. On one side, one column, write all the emotions that you experience at least once a week that empower you in some way. Love, passion, excitement, creativity, whatever it is, peace, determination, I don't know, what are yours? I want you to write the emotions, though, you don't experience once in a while. The ones you experience at least once a week in a powerful way and really feel it. Not an emotion you feel once every blue moon. On the other side of that page, or if you do it on our little application or wherever we put it here, the other side I want you to write all the negative emotions, or to be more fair, all emotions can be positive if you use them, all the disempowering emotions. The ones that tend to put you in a state where you don't follow through. And I want you on that side to write all of them and do it simultaneously. Just keep making your list. What are the emotions I go into that mess me up, like feeling frustrated or overwhelmed or lost or alone or depressed or pissed off and rageful, whatever it is you go. And again, not emotions you experience once in a while, the ones you experience at least once a week. So make a list of all the emotions you experience at least once a week. Ones that empower you, ones that disempower you, on the list. That's step one. That's identifying where you live. And circle the top two out of the whole list that you experience most often that are empowering, and the top two you experience most often that are disempowering. That'll be step one. Now, I'm trying to explain it to you here, it'll be right in front of you as well, so if you forget what I'm saying, it's going to be on the little checklist. But I want you to know what I mean. Step two, let's identify the solution. So you look at your list, and you see on the disempowering list, I got sadness and depression, or I got feeling lonely, or I've got feeling rage and anger, or I got feeling fear. What emotional state would you like to feel in that situation that would change your life? If it's fear, maybe it's courage. Again, courage doesn't mean it's easy, doesn't mean you feel, confident. It just means you're going to do it anyway. Maybe it's determination. Maybe instead of feeling alone, you feel loving and you go give to somebody else. What's the antidote? What's an emotional pattern that if you live that, it would change the game? Is it faith? Is it passion? Is it courage? Is it playfulness? You're taking things just too damn seriously. You've forgotten perspective. Go watch the show again. See if you really have a problem. See if your problems are as challenging as the people you just saw who transformed their tragedy into something tremendous, something beautiful, something magnificent, something meaningful, something that can even help other people that are watching. That's the beauty. So that's the second step. What's the antidote? Come up with your antidote emotion. Step three is you got to practice that emotion. Now, I know that sounds silly, stupid, kind of weird. But if you came to a seminar with me, you'd see, 3,000, 10,000 people, and we do this, and we condition that a new emotion till you can shift gears. Have you ever heard about the fire walk? It's not about the fire walk. I do skydiving, all kinds of crazy stuff. It's a metaphor for how do I go from afraid, the fire's metaphor for whatever you don't follow through on your life, whatever holds you back, to snapping and going to a state of mind where I just move through. It's not this big mind over matter thing, it's mind over emotion. It's shifting. And when you learn how to go from scared to determined in action, what can't you do in your life? So we show you how to do that. But for right now, I'll give you just a quick example. Understand that emotion is really created by motion, by the way you use your body. So quick example, real quick. Imagine a time when you know someone who's depressed or you were depressed. If you ever felt that way, I'm sure you have at some time. And think about what you do with your body. When somebody's depressed, do they get all excited, talk faster, gesture? No. Everything kind of slows down, doesn't it? What happens to your shoulders? They drop. Where's your head when you're depressed? Drops. Where's your breathing? Full or shallow? It becomes shallow. You talk loud and fast or slow and quiet? Slow and quiet, more hesitant. Now, Emotion is created by motion. You can try and think yourself and I'm happy, but if you go, I'm happy, and your body's like this, nothing's gonna change. We can change our biochemistry by eating, by taking a drug, by smoking a cigarette, because then you take a different breath, you eat food you like, you fill up your tummy, and you start to breathe nice. Your whole mental, emotional state changes, doesn't it? So what I'm saying is you don't need the cigarette, you don't actually need the food. You can just physically learn to say, this is what I do when I'm depressed, this is what I do when I'm most determined. There's this gesture I made. I remember one time when I was a kid, or one time I got pissed off and what did I do? I made a gesture, I stood taller, I looked the person in the eye, I spoke with more authority. Now, my idea of passion and determination may be a little over the top for you, and I get it. I'm a crazy mofo and I'm a passionate human being, but you can do your version. What do you do when you're really feeling something like determined? What do you do when you are passionate? With your face, with your voice, with your body. Just practice and make a contrast. Here's what I do when I'm sad. Here's what I do when I feel loved. Here's what I do when I'm worried. Here's what I do when I'm determined. That's what I mean by practice. And I'd love to have you in an event, but I'm trying to give this to you so you can do it right now, and you can. And maybe this would be helpful to do with friends so they can give you feedback and say, here's what you do. I see you do this when you're really strong. I see you do that when you're kind of weak. That's the third step. Practice. Now, what's the assignment? Figure out your emotions. Where do you live? Positive, negative. What are the big primary antidotes? What emotions do you need? Practice the emotions you need so you can go into them a few times. Sounds a little weird, but if you do it, you'll see it's actually quite fun. Feels powerful. Maybe do it with a friend. That's the easy way to do it. And condition it. And that means take the next 3 days, do this 3 times. Figure out the difference and shift from not sure, worried to determined. From overwhelmed, I don't know what to do, to focused. And you just deliberately, physically make the change from one to the other. 3 times for 3 days. If you're bold, do it for 7. But if you do this 3 or 4 times a day for 3 to 7 days, you'll start to get a pattern in your body. And the pattern in your body, a new pattern means a new life. Our life's a reflection of our emotional patterns. If you live in sadness and depression, you could have $1 billion and your life is called sad and depressed. If you're living feeling grateful, feeling alive, feeling passionate, your life is filled with gratitude and passion. Doesn't matter what's happening anywhere else. And you can face any challenge from those emotions and you can overcome.